I'm pretty used to seeing bad central vac installations, usually done by installers who do not service central vac systems, so they're never going to have to deal with the problems that the bad installations cause. They really couldn't care less. Um, and I see things like this improper use of T fittings or this is really a less than optimal fitting for any application, but really it's bad when you've got the majority of the system on one side of the fitting and only one or two inlets on the other side of the fitting, because then so much debris builds up in the lesser used branch line. So that's not good, and you can see how much buildup has occurred in this fitting. Also, I see stuff like this quite a bit. If you can see in there, not only was this pipe not cut with a tube cutter, it also was not glued all the way into the fitting, causing, well, in this case, it couldn't be glued all the way into the fitting because it's just cut so off of square. And that causes a pocket where something like a hairpin can go in and get lodged in there, causing a clog. And that was actually the reason for the call that this homeowner placed to me. And I cut out all these sections of piping out of one system. This one here, again, they had two lines coming together down to the machine, and then the machine ended up being to the right of this. So rather than just cutting it out and relocating it, or ideally using a different kind of fitting, a Y with a 45 and a 90, they just did that big U-turn. Terrible, sloppy work. And you can see again that nice gap inside there to catch debris. And you can see how much of a clear passage there is for stuff to go through from one side to the other. The air makes the turn, but the dirt hits the wall. And some of it'll turn, some of it'll just shoot straight past and sit in here until this side of the system is used. And I always thought that these sorts of problems came from PVC tubing being so easy to install. Anybody can glue PVC pipes together. And I always thought that the older, the really early systems were always installed better because it was just so much work to cut and thread iron piping. If you were going to go through all that trouble, then you were going to do it right. And I recently discovered that that wasn't always the case. There have been bad installations since the very beginning. And here's some piping that I recently cut out of an old Arco Wand system, which would have been a unit like that. Not this exact one, but something close to it. 1915 installation. And here's a couple of the problems that I found. First of all, this kind of fitting is the 1915 equivalent of one of these. And you had inlets here and there, and then this went down to the machine. And the problem is, if you look in there, well, you can't really see, but okay, there you go. So you can see straight through. There's nothing that would make the debris turn. So when you're vacuuming on this inlet, most of the debris is going to just go over to here. And then when you're vacuuming on this inlet, most of it's going to just go over to here. And if you use this side way more than you use this side for whatever reason, that means that this is just going to get clogged and stay clogged. So not a good fitting. This plug is totally useless because this just went straight down into the machine. You would never need to rod out this section of the system. Another problem that I found was they had used non-drainage type fittings in certain sections of the system. Look at the difference in the size of the body of the fitting compared to the size of the hub here versus here. See how the body of the fitting and the hub are almost the same size here? Well, this is known as a recessed hub drainage fitting, and it's the proper type of fitting to use. This design, this pattern is not proper, but the recessed hub means when you screw the pipe into the fitting all the way, there's not going to be a gap for things to collect like there was over on this stuff, and then you won't get a clog. Well, if you use a non-recessed hub fitting like you'd use for a gas line or a steam line or something, then there's a big shoulder where the pipe screws in because it's not recessed. You can see that it's just It's just threaded into the body of the fitting. These are a lot more common and a lot cheaper than these, but they're not suitable for drainage, and they're really not suitable for a vacuum cleaner system where you've got fast moving air with dirt in it just looking for any spot to catch. So there was some of this. One of the lines had been clogged and had been simply abandoned. They hadn't used the inlet. They stopped using that part of the system way before they stopped using the rest of it because of just this. And the last defect I saw was, if you look here, see how barely any of the threads were actually engaged in a fitting? They hadn't screwed all these pipes home into the fittings all the way, which also left a gap, just like this stuff. Same kind of thing. And when I cut some of these pipes out, the fittings that or the pieces of pipe that were still going up into the walls were loose. You could unscrew them by hand because nobody had ever put pipe dope on them and taken a wrench to them and screwed them home. So anyway, my longtime perception that central vacs used to be installed better than they are today has been disproven, and I hope somebody finds this as interesting as I did.